Good morning, Britain. Philip Schofield breaks his silence to deny he groomed a young male colleague.
What was unwise was the fact that it happened, and that was a very, very grave error. Now, it was consensual, but it was my fault.
In two bombshell interviews, the former This Morning host apologised to the young man, his ex-wife and his co-presenter, Holly Willoughby, as attention turns to what ITV bosses will tell MPs.
Police search a boat after the death of two teenagers in a half-term tragedy off Bournemouth Cove Beach.
A man who was arrested on suspicion of manslaughter has been released as police confirm the two who sadly died here were not hit by a vessel.
Is this real? Did this really happen?
We hear from a woman who won thousands after her partner posted naked pictures of her online. Plus, Love Island star Georgia Harrison tells us why the law must change.
His Bruno's very expensive. But I think you got me a discount. I think the public will want us to be back together. I do.
And Britain's got Tonioli at least for another year, the judges say. We've got that BGT exclusive as we catch up with Simon, Amanda, Alicia and Bruno ahead of this Sunday's final.
And it's plenty more of the same as we head into this weekend. Warm temperatures, plenty of sunshine, but also high levels of UV and pollen. All those details and more coming up on Good Morning Britain.
Friday, 2nd of June, 2023. Live from Television Centre in London. This is Good Morning Britain with Ben Shephard and Kate Garraway.
Morning.
Hi there, it's just gone at 6 o'clock. Lovely to have you in the studio, Kate Garraway.
Lovely to be here.
I was fully expecting you to be on a beach, sunning yourself.
I was fully expecting me to be still trying to parallel park, driving my parents back, if I'm honest. But yeah, we did our annual Garraway Jamboree in Cornwall, which is lovely. I think we're now about 21 people strong.
Is it?
It's huge
it's like
now.
the Clampets all get together. The madness ensues.
Spread over 3 rented properties. But for the first time this year, my dad said he's now going to be 88 in a month's time. He said, I think you can drive.
So he's got to 88 before we allow you to drive. Yeah. He knows you so well.
But he navigated every single bit of the way. He was like my goose. And I don't just mean like, oh, yes, take the A30. I mean, left at this roundabout. Left of this roundabout.
Isn't
Don't
that why
go
we
into
have sat-navs?
Tesco's, go straight on. It was my own personal sat-nav. It's brilliant. And we got back, and I'm here this morning, so it was lovely.
All safe and sound.
Gorgeous week for it, though. If you're still down in Cornwall, I'm very jealous.
Or
lovely
there is
sunshine.
nowhere finer, is there, than the British coastline in the sunshine.
Absolutely.
An amazing time. Well, we are thrilled that you had a good time, and the whole family being together as well. That must have been lovely.
It's amazing, because my cousins, who are much younger than me, have now all got babies. So suddenly Darcy and Billy are like the grown-up ones.
Amazing.
And I said, get back out there, more sandcastles. You've had it for you.
You can put
now
your feet
it
up
moves
and
on.
yeah,
I know. I'm now the grandparents. Yeah,
love
exactly.
it. Amazing. Well, it's great to have you back in the studio.
Lovely to be here. So our main news this morning is that Philip Schofield says he is utterly broken and ashamed over the affair he had with a younger colleague, but has denied grooming the man.
Yeah, in his first TV interview since leaving ITV, the presenter said he was deeply mortified and will die sorry. Our chief correspondent, Richard Gaisford, is outside ITV studios here in West London. So, Richard, morning to you. The first time this is, of course, since we've heard from Philip Schofield, and he started to tell his side of the story.
Yeah, an awful lot's been said about Philip Schofield in more than 2 weeks since he walked out of the building here. This is, as you say, the first time that he's been able to put what he says is his side of the story, perhaps in his mind, set the record straight. He has been talking with Amal Rajan over at the BBC, also with the Sun newspaper, describing what started as a conversation online with a Twitter follower turning into working with that same person at ITV's This Morning, and then, as Philip Schofield describes it, a consensual moment in his dressing room in 2017. Now, he is saying sorry to Holly Willoughby. He's apologising to his ex-wife, but he says his greatest apology is to the man who, in Philip Schofield's words, has been brought the greatest misery in his totally innocent life.
What was unwise was the fact that it happened. And that was a very, very grave error. Now, it was consensual, but it was my fault.
Philip Schofield giving his first television interview since leaving ITV and This Morning, a show he's been part of for more than 20 years, after admitting to lying about a relationship with a younger colleague. Speaking to BBC's Amal Rajan, he disputed accusations that his behaviour amounted to grooming.
It was a completely innocent backwards and forwards over a period of time about a job, about careers. You know, I mean, you do that. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with talking to someone, no matter, you know, what age they are? Does that mean that if you're following anyone on Twitter, that you absolutely don't talk to anybody else or you don't give advice? So I disagree with the summation that you just gave, because that does paint a very grave picture.
ITV's chief executive, Dame Carolyn McCall, announced earlier this week that an independent review will take place to establish the facts. Meanwhile, she herself will face questions at a session of the Culture, Media and Sport Committee on the 14th of June. Schofield also chose to speak to the Sun newspaper and was asked who he felt he owed an apology to.
Everybody, to every single person, I am deeply sorry. And I apologise to him, because I should have known better.
Speaking openly of regrets that have changed his broadcasting legacy and brought his career, at least at ITV, to an abrupt end. Richard Gaisford. Good morning, Britain.
Well, that is our top story this morning. And coming up, we're going to be discussing this further with Jackie Smith and Lord Edvasey. And we'll also look at the rest of the day's news as well. And Sean's got an update on that.
Kate, thank you very much indeed. Good morning to you. A man arrested on suspicion of manslaughter after a 12-year-old girl and a 17-year-old boy died off Bournemouth Beach has been released under investigation. Lorna Shattuck is at Bournemouth Beach for us. Good morning to you, Lorna. Police have released more details about the incident, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right, Sean. We're finding out a little bit more about what occurred here at Bournemouth Beach on Wednesday afternoon. We know that 10 swimmers in total got into difficulties, and 2 of them were children, as you've just said, a 12-year-old girl from Buckinghamshire and a 17-year-old boy from Southampton. Now, they both sustained critical injuries and later, very sadly, died in hospital. Now, police say that the pair were not related, but following, as you say, that arrest of a man in his 40s on suspicion of manslaughter, who has since been released under investigation, there has been a lot of speculation about just exactly what happened, and that is why police have said a little bit more about what they are ruling out in order to try and avoid some of that speculation.
Early investigation indicates that there was no physical contact between a vessel and any of the swimmers at the time of the incident. I can also confirm there is no suggestion of people jumping from the pier or jet skis being involved.
Well, in the meantime, we also there are also reports that a pleasure boat that had been operating from off this pier, called the Dorset Belle, has been impounded by Dorset Police and is now under a cordon just down the road in Poole Harbour. But in the meantime, the local council does say that it's now assessing the safety protocols in the water surrounding this pier in the wake of what has happened. And police are also appealing for any witnesses, anyone who's got any phone footage or indeed any information about what happened on Wednesday afternoon, so that they can try and piece together exactly what transpired and why this tragedy took place.
Lorna, thank you very much indeed. Now, ministers are preparing for a high-profile legal battle with the inquiry into the COVID-19 pandemic as the government seeks to challenge the inquiry's demands for Boris Johnson's redacted WhatsApp messages and notebooks. Nithya Rajan is in Westminster for us. Good morning, Nithya. So, I mean, this story just keeps running and running, doesn't it? This is an unprecedented move by the government.
Sean, unprecedented certainly is the right word. Baroness Hallett, the chair of the COVID inquiry, had asked for the Cabinet Office to hand over all of the unredacted WhatsApp messages, notes, notebooks, documents that had circulated between Boris Johnson and his ministers during the time of the pandemic. The Cabinet Office refused, stating that the inquiry was demanding unambiguously irrelevant information that could compromise the private lives of ministers. Now, what this essentially will mean is that both sides will have to fight their corner in court, essentially. Those representing the COVID inquiry could argue that it is Baroness Hallett that has to decide what is relevant and what isn't to the COVID inquiry. Those representing the Cabinet Office could argue that handing everything over will set a precedent, it will compromise the private lives of ministers and also potentially prevent them from discussing policy matters in the future. Now, last night, George Freeman, the Science Minister, said that even if the government lost, that this was still a worthwhile exercise to play out in court, because essentially it will answer the question of how far the powers of the inquiry go when it comes to retracting that information.
I don't think it is a cynical waste of time at all. Even if all this achieves is to make very clear that the inquiry will treat with absolute confidentiality anything private, it is really important that the rules of this are made clear, and I absolutely have very little doubt that the courts will find that Baroness Hallett will decide what evidence she deems relevant, and then we can get on with it.
And at the heart of all of this are the bereaved families who very much feel like they've been sidelined and have accused the government of sitting on evidence.
They make us feel that our loved ones are definitely not front and centre, but somewhere as a footnote. We need to see that content. How can you do your job with one arm tied behind your back? Doesn't it just make you want to know even more what's in there that they don't want us to see?
Now, last night it emerged that Boris Johnson had not handed over the messages on his phone that was used before April 2021. It was around that time, that he got a new phone due to a security breach. Now, a spokesperson for Mr. Johnson has said that his old phone hasn't been switched on since April 2021 and has added that they have asked the Cabinet Office for security and technical help in order to get that information off that phone without there being a compromise of any security measures.
So they just need IT support. Nithya, thank you very much indeed. Also this morning, rail passengers are facing further travel disruption this morning as workers from the RMT union take strike action in a long-running dispute over jobs, pay and conditions. Around 50% of train services across England are expected to run today. Tomorrow, members of the drivers' union, ASLEF, will walk out for the second time this week in their dispute over pay.
We need a decent pay rise, we need job security, and we need people's contracts to be made no less worse going forward. When they put an offer on the table that looks like that, we'll put that to our members and hopefully this dispute can be resolved. But until they do that, it's very much on, and I hope this doesn't happen, but further strikes could be called.
President Biden has fallen over during a graduation ceremony at the US Air Force Academy in Colorado. The 80-year-old tripped over a sandbag and fell to his knees before being helped up by 3 people. The president's spokesman said he was fine. Europa League final referee Anthony Taylor and his family have been confronted by a group of Roma fans at Budapest airport after the Italian side's defeat by Sevilla. The official was criticised for his performance in the final by Roma manager Jose Mourinho after they lost on penalties. Well, England's top refereeing body has called the abuse unjustified and abhorrent. The Prince and Princess of Wales have been surprise guests at the wedding of Jordan's Crown Prince. William and Kate flew to Jordan's capital, Amman, to join heads of state and world leaders at the royal nuptials, and were pictured congratulating the newlyweds after the ceremony. Now, organisers of this weekend's Epsom Derby have promised the biggest ever security operation to stop protesters from interrupting racing. The Jockey Club says it has spent £150,000 and had an injunction put in place over fears protesters will attempt to disrupt the race. Will Godley reports.
Animal Rising warned they'd disrupt April's Grand National, and they stuck to their word. 118 people were arrested as protesters tried to glue themselves to part of the course. Fast forward to Derby Day, and Epsom organisers have spent £150,000 on measures aiming to stop a repeat performance.
You will see, I think, what is going to be probably the most significant security operation the Derby has ever seen. A lot more security staff, a lot more police. We've got extra fencing up in certain areas that wouldn't normally be the case.
But the Jockey Club fears Animal Rising are still intent on causing disturbance, so it's been granted a High Court injunction, making it easier to prosecute disruptors. Anyone entering the track, throwing objects or endangering others could face a fine or even imprisonment. Outside the course, Animal Rising will hold their own legal demonstration, but they haven't ruled out going further.
There will be a family fun day out the front, but there will also be people causing that sort of disruption, which creates the conversation which we've been having for the last couple of months.
Tomorrow will see the 244th Epsom Derby, but the 134th in 1913 was disrupted. Suffragette Emily Davison was killed when she ran underneath the King's horse. 110 years later, protesters still see racetracks as a stage, even as racegoers try to keep them from the sport. Will Godley, Good Morning Britain.
For the first time in football history, there will be an all-Manchester FA Cup final as the city's biggest rivals face off at Wembley tomorrow. Jonathan Swain is in Manchester for us. Good morning, Jonathan. Look, I love this fact. This is the only time the trophy has already been engraved ahead of the final. It's brilliant.
It's great, isn't it? We know it's going to be Manchester, don't we? But is it going to be United or is it going to be City? And Sean, I didn't realise it's actually the first time that these two teams have actually met in the FA Cup final, all their prestigious footballing history that they've had over hundreds of years. Well, look, it is a divided city, isn't it? But not just a divided city, it's actually dividing families in Manchester as well. Here we've got the McNally family. Morning to you. We've got various age ranges here, from a 5-week-old baby to Grandad over here, who doesn't mind me mentioning that he's 69 years old. Dennis is the dad of this particular family here. And give us a sense of United supporter, but not necessarily United within the household. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah. I'm United, always have been since the day I was born.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I married a Blue. Yeah.
And what about your children as well? What's their divided loyalties?
So the children, the two youngest, 1 and 2, come to Old Trafford with me with season tickets every week. Yeah. And my daughter, she's a Blue, but it's very early, so she's up in bed at the moment.
All right, OK, fair enough.
Yeah.
So we've got even more people here. So are you going to the game tomorrow, are you?
We're going down tomorrow, yeah. Going in the car, probably going to take us a few hours, so we've got to set off nice and early.
Exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that, because there is actually a train strike tomorrow, of course, going to cause a lot of disruption. That's why National Express is putting on, well, they said they're putting on lots of coaches, over 100 of them, to get some extra 5,000 supporters down there. The extra police are on duty as well tomorrow, of course, to watch out for protesters, because the protesters did disrupt the rugby Premiership final at Twickenham last week. Let's talk to... Anyway, that's all the newsy, serious stuff. We've got Louise here as well, so you're his wife of 7 years.
Yeah.
Could be a bit awkward, couldn't it? Post, whoever wins on Saturday.
Yeah, well, we don't talk on Derby Day anyway.
Do you not?
No, we get get solicitors out every single Derby Day. Divorce papers out every single one.
So you had 3 conditions to marry your husband. One of them clearly wasn't to marry United.
Yeah, well, he had to be a Blue. Didn't get that. Had to like mushrooms. He loved mushrooms. That was the first questions they asked him. And he had to have a sense of humour. He's got that, I'd say. 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
The mushrooms is slightly an odd one for marriage, but there we go. As I say, we've got a few hours yet till kick-off. We're going to be here all morning, Sean, but for now, I think I should stand in between them and just be the referee for this rowdy lot this morning.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think you're going to be needed there. Brilliant. I love the way love has conquered all, hasn't it? It's sort of brought the two families together.
It's the one thing it hasn't conquered is their divide over which team they're going to support. So one of the kids is a Blue, the other 2 are Reds.
Yeah.
Sense of humour is... I mean, and then, of course, Manchester City have had the best of it for the last few years, particularly, having had all that United dominance for so many years.
Yeah, but the stats are in United's favour, aren't they? But recent history is in City's, is that right?
In terms of how many times they've won the FA Cup. Well, it's one of those things, though. If you go off form, Sean, can you see United turning them over?
Yeah, anything can happen in the cup final. I mean, when they play in the league, of course, it can end in a draw, so that would be a happy family. They can all be contented. But there's got to be a winner.
Extra time and penalties.
I don't know. I think there's such ardent fans that a draw could be the worst of all worlds, couldn't it? Because nobody's quite happy.
Well, it won't. As Sean says, it's going to go to extra time. It's going to go to penalties. Do let us know if you're a divided Mancunian household this morning. Have you got Reds and Blues in the same house? How do you do it? I love the fact that she was saying the divorce papers come out. They genuinely don't talk to each other on Derby Day all morning till the match has happened.
And then they
and
gradually...
when and City battered United at the Etihad this year. I think it's 1-1 in terms of derbies. But the husband was saying he didn't want to go home. He said, I couldn't go home. I had to stay out as long as I could. I couldn't bear walking back in the door and the look on his wife's face. We're going to be talking more to them a little bit later on, but do get in touch with us. Are you divided? How do you cope in your house?
Let's have a look at the weather. Here's Alex.
Things are heating up. Boxed. Proud sponsors of weather on Good Morning Britain.
Hello, a very good morning to you. It's a bit like Groundhog Day at the moment, but I'm certainly not complaining. It is another beautiful day and actually a beautiful weekend ahead. And in fact, unlike the last couple of mornings, the cloud will clear that bit clearer, or quicker, I should say, as we head into the afternoon. So the weekend on the whole looking dry, sunny and relatively warm, but do watch out for higher levels of UV and also grass pollen, which is certainly kicked in at the moment. Satellite and radar picture shows a very thin layer of cloud. That breaks up quicker than it did yesterday. I know a few of you weren't happy with how long it took to clear, but we got there in the afternoon. This afternoon looking lovely again, plenty of sunshine, wall-to-wall in many places. Temperatures also fairly respectable, although there will be breezier conditions across the south coast like there have been over the last couple of days, but highs of 20, 22 degrees Celsius, not too bad at all. Heading into this evening and overnight, we will see a bit of cloud building up here and there, but that clears away very quickly as we head into tomorrow. Tomorrow, again, another lovely, sunny, bright start to the day.
For the weather in detail where you are, go to itv.com/weather.